Creating a virtual scene with our second unit extras could be valuable in a lot of cases, indie films or even commercials or corporate work. Let's say you need a transitional scene between, oh, I don't know, characters going to a restaurant or to a bar. Lots of times you might have a driving shot or something, but perhaps you want to add a shot of a sidewalk or people walking just again as a transition. And so what we've got here, this has already been done, but I'll just deconstruct it. We did this in Premiere as well to show that you don't have to use After Effects or Nuke or anything like that, although you could, and you might get better results. But in Premiere, you can do a really pretty decent job using our second unit extras. So let me hit play on this. This is a pretty simple setup, and we actually used a still photo for our background plate to also show that you can do kind of fun stuff with really basic, simple elements. So what do we do here? Right here we have several layers, and I will start with this bottom layer, which is our JPEG. It's just a still image we took actually with an iPhone. And what we did was added some various effects, and this is subjective. You just do this to taste. We used Film Convert, which you may or may not have. Premiere has some LUTs within the software through their Lumetri engine, I think that's what it's called, that you can turn on or off or add as needed, and it just gives it a little more cinematic look. And then we added Film Convert just to kind of flatten it out a little bit. Again, this is all done to taste, and on this particular shot we decided to have the background plate be in focus, and then you'll see the foreground objects are a little bit defocused. More often than not you would do it the other way, but in this case we thought that would be the appropriate way to do it. And so what we've done here in this sequence is just layered in our second unit extra clips, pulled the keys, and then color graded to taste. And again, so let me deconstruct this backwards again. So here is the background plate. We added this clip, which has two extras walking back and forth. Let me remove the effects, and the effects I used were pretty much built into Premiere. The only one that's third party is Colorista, and you could use the Premiere color grading software, color correcting software. I like Colorista better. So we turn Colorista off. You can see a pretty drastic difference. We were trying to match the color of the people in the shot, the extras, to the background, but we'll get to that in a second. And then I also added a little blur. It's got motion blur built into the footage, and we just used Ultra Key, which is built into Premiere, and it does a pretty good job. Keylight or Primat Keyer in After Effects or even in Premiere with Primat would probably do a better job. But for these purposes, again, we just wanted to show using a native NLE and letting you see that you can do it with fairly simple tools. So that's the original footage, and this was shot on Red using an Epic in 5K. The clip we're using, though, I believe is a 2K clip that was down converted, and it's in ProRes 4444, ProRes Quad 4. So what we did is we applied a key. We pulled the key using Ultra Key. You can see it there. We refined it as needed. This isn't really a compositing tutorial. It's more about just how to use our extras, samples of the way to use them. For compositing tips and tricks, hit YouTube, or we have a few other things on our website. But you can see the different settings here and the way you pull a key. But the main thing with compositing is making the foreground objects match the background. The best way to do it is through lighting when you're doing it on set. But in this case, these are stock elements, and so they're already lit, and they're lit to be used outside or inside, depending on the background plate. And since they're red and they're raw, if you purchase the red raw, you have a lot of control over the look of the image. Again, for this sample, we're using the ProRes Rec 709, which has a baked-in look. But if you went with the raw, you could have a lot more control. So we added a color correction, give it a little more warmth. And then we added a little more, it's got motion blur, as I said, but we added a little bit of Gaussian blur here in Premiere. And you can use different blurs however you'd like to do it. But just to kind of simulate some shallow depth of field, you can see the difference between that. I mean, it's subtle. My computer is being a little slow here. And then adding the blur, there you go. And then what I did on top of the whole file is I like to put on this adjustment layer here, I like to put a grade on top of everything. So we did a subtle grade on the, there's adding the grade on top, but let me take that away and take that away. And so what we did, again, just to recap, we added a subtle grade on the still image on the background plate using Film Convert and a Lumetri preset, more or less. Then from there, we added a color grade on top of our second unit extras. You can see subtly me moving that back and forth. And then on top of that, I added an overall grade, and that's rendered. So that's why the image gets sharper and looks better instead of being in, I think, half resolution mode is what that was. At any rate, the overall color grade kind of blends the two together and makes it seem a little more realistic, a little more. Now, you know, when you stop on these, it doesn't necessarily look as photoreal as you might want, but in real time, when you're playing it, I think it passes pretty well. And especially once you add in some sound design, put some street noise, some Foley of some footsteps, maybe a little bit of chatter in the distance, you've got a pretty nice little transitional scene. The one thing I didn't talk about was, as you can see right here, I overlapped these two clips. So this is actually right here is another clip of a second unit extra of a female walking by on her phone. Did the same thing with her though. Let me turn off this top layer, and you can see here I've got the same thing going here. Here's the key of her, and I got the blur turned on, and I got there's Colorista as well. So there's the original. Got some motion blur. We shot 24p on this. You pull the key, add a little bit of color grading, and then add just a little bit of blur for shallower depth of field, and then make it all look more of a match by adding an overall grade. And so you've got the two shots blended together, and looks like couple folks walking back and forth, and be a nice transitional shot, whether in a feature film or any kind of media film project you have.